So recently I got this billet of Damascus steel and I've been trying to figure out what I want to make with it. You can see on this side I have an idea for a knife. I like that style of knife there. I could do one big Bowie knife, but I mean that's just kind of what everybody makes and it's not very practical. So we had the idea of making a batarang. I mean, this would be so cool. I've never seen anybody make one out of Damascus steel. I've seen people make them out of like table saw blades, but I think Damascus steel would look super cool. So what I'm gonna do is copy this image, and then what I'll be able to do is just go right into Inkscape. I'll make a new file, because I was starting on that one, and then we'll paste it in here. We can make it a little bigger. Go up here to the top where it says Path, Trace Bitmap, and then in this tab I'm going to uncheck Smooth, uncheck Remove Background, and click the down arrow. So take the number of scans down to 2, and then click on Grays. So once I do that, I'll click Update, and that looks good. I'll click OK. And you can see now we have a vector of the Batman logo. Now, in order to make sure this will fit onto my billet, what I'm going to do is measure this. So I have a ruler, and this is 10 inches by 1 3/4. So what I'll do is I'll draw a box that is height 1.75, and then the width 10. Now I'll take the batarang, make it different color like red, and we'll shrink it down until it fits. So right, want to get the biggest size we can. That looks cool. That would fit. It would be about that size. Now, if we click on that, we can get the dimensions of what this would be. So with the ruler here, it says it would be 5 inches by 1.74, which is basically 3/4 of an inch. So 1 3/4 of an inch. So it would be this tall and this wide. I think that actually would be a pretty good dimension there. It's a little small, but I think that would work fine. It's a good throwing size. If you're not familiar with Damascus steel, this is really a cool steel. Normally it's made up of 2 different kinds of steel put together. It's high nickel steel and high carbon steel, and those 2 have contrasting colors and almost makes it look like it have wood grain. You can see if I click on this image here, this is raindrop pattern Damascus. How they make this, they get a billet of Damascus just like this, basically, and then they drill a bunch of holes in it with the drill press, and then they forge it together with a power hammer, and that creates this really cool pattern on the steel. And then you can see, like on this knife here, it just looks like wood grain almost. It's really a cool steel, especially for knives. So just imagine that on the batarang. So what I'm going to do is actually apply this in Inkscape. And to do that, I'm just gonna right click on the image, click copy image, and then go over to Inkscape, paste. We'll move it down to the bottom layer. And what we're going to do is basically cut out the outline. In order to do that, I need to trace bitmap. So I'll trace bitmap, keep it on grays, and I'll uncheck remove background. I'll update it and click OK. So now it won't look quite as realistic, but I mean that looks pretty close. So what we can do, move this to the top layer, actually, no, the bottom layer. I'll click on this and this, path, difference. Let's see, that didn't work. This looked like there's the Damascus pattern on it. What I'm going to do is basically take the negative on a rectangle, so it'll just kind of look like it has the Damascus pattern. What I'm going to do is draw a rectangle over this, real big, down at the bottom layer, I'll make it blue. center this just like that. Now select both of these, difference, and now I have the hole cut in this square. And then if I move it over the Damascus Steel, you can see that's kind of like what our pattern is going to look like on the batarang. And that looks really cool. That looks really cool. So I just printed out the piece here. Now I'm going to cut it out with some scissors. So now I'm going to go ahead and trace this out onto just a piece of thin plywood, and then I'll be able to cut this out on the bandsaw and just get a feel for the size and make sure everything is correct and I'm actually able to cut this out. So of course I want to lose as little Damascus steel as possible. What I was able to do here is cut in and then slowly widen my angle enough where I can turn the blade and get pretty sharp corners there. Because of course I didn't want to just cut through all the way through the steel like that. That would waste a little bit too long. So now we have this all roughed in. What I'm going to do now is clamp it in the vise and then use a file just to clean all this up and get the edges correct. Now that's exactly what I would be doing with the steel as well. So grab the file and start filing this and getting it nice and clean, get crisp edges. So I just finished cutting this out. I put some bevels on there with the file. I think it looks really nice. And if I put it on my piece of steel, you can see it fits on there perfectly. It's not interfering with this knife here. Of course it is covering up this knife, but there's a little less waste. I'm not wasting all of that. There is definitely still waste here. I might try to think of another way I can place this on here, but then I also have a lot of room up here for something. So I'm just gonna play around with placement. Maybe I can put it here and do two things on the side. I'm still just figuring out where to put it and what I want to make with this, but I really like the idea of this batarang.